Okay, would you turn your mic on?
Yes. Hello, my name is Sarah.
Me.
Test. I'm going to cut all of this out, and
No, I think it should be the bloopers.
it might be the intro. Hey guys, Pastor Philip Jackson with Reach Tulsa. I'm excited to introduce our episode this week. We have our special guest, Sarah Ashcroft. She's the new director for the Southeast campus for the Tulsa Community College Baptist Collegiate Ministries, as well as Christa Smith, general awesome person and greatest intern of all time. I'm also joined by my co-pastor, Pastor Taylor Gabbert, our pastor to college students here at Reach. And today we're going to talk about why college students are important. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. Here we go.
May we burn for you, Lord, like a million stars, like a million stars. Whoa, whoa.
Okay, so what we're going to do on this special episode of the Reach podcast is we have Sarah Ashcroft here, who is the new BCM director for Tulsa Community College. She's flashing some peace symbols. I don't really know what that means.
Victory.
The kids are doing it these days.
Yeah.
But I want to give Sarah a chance to introduce herself. She's not new to Tulsa, but she is kind of coming back.
She's back.
Instead of the boys are back in town, the girls are back in town. If you guys know that old song that probably no one knows. But Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what God's doing in your life, where you've been, why you're the prodigal daughter coming back from Edmond. But I'm totally joking.
Kyle Thomas, if you're listening.
Yeah. Kyle, our dearly departed friend, Kyle Thomas.
Rip.
Rip. Kyle has been a great ministry partner. We've got a great relationship with the BCM here at Reach and at Evergreen. But Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what God's done in your life, how you got here, and what your vision is for BCM at TCC?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Owasso, Oklahoma, so the best part of Tulsa. Just kidding.
Hey.
And I went to Owasso High School and was super active in my youth group. And then I went to college and life just kind of sucked because I was at TCC and no one really chooses TCC. But after God just really moving in my life through a lot of trials, he introduced me to the BCM. And so from there, I just kind of started getting more plugged in and following the Lord and actually obeying him and what he calls us to do. And so I started interning with BCM for the rest of college, so 3 years. And then I decided I felt called into ministry. So I went to the University of Central Oklahoma and worked as the women's director over there. And it was a great time. I loved it. But it was really short because then the Lord called me to Tulsa. So now I'm back. I love being the Southeast Campus director. It's been really fun working with Christa again and goofing off, but also sharing Jesus with college students and trying to create an environment of community in community college.
Mm-hmm. Krista's pretty great. Let's be honest.
Thank you. Hey, this is recorded, so.
This is recorded.
Thank you.
I will say that from the rooftops. Christa Smith, we call her Critter. I call her Critter.
Gross.
Only I do. That's her childhood nickname, for those who are wondering. There's going to be all kinds of people that call you that now. But Christa is also with us today and is doing big things in college ministry and with the BCM, and has really been an incredible asset, not just for Reach, but also for BCM. We kind of tag team. She interns for us with Reach and with Young Adult Ministry at Evergreen, but she also works with the BCM.
I told someone this past week, they were like, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a professional intern." It was really funny.
You basically are a professional intern.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of internships, but you're about to graduate from college and
So excited.
go change the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
At UCO
After
BCM
going to Edmond,
as
so-
the women's director.
Yeah, so there's this holy Cupid shuffle going on with all of the BCM people that are dear to my life, and then also not to take away from his greatness, the great Taylor Gabbert, our college pastor here at Evergreen. Taylor's also here.
Yes, I am.
We've already talked about you in previous podcasts. So the question that we want to talk about today is college students. Why college students matter? Do they really matter? TCC, you don't, like Sarah just said, you don't choose TCC. TCC kind of chooses you. It's kind of like you're not the hero that we want. You're the hero we deserve.
I don't know about that either.
I don't know that either. But so I want to throw that question out to the group. What is it about college students that is unique to them and how they can be used in the kingdom?
Sarah, you're up.
Okay.
You're the professional here.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to start off with, like, even though they're super busy, like, they have much more free time than they will in their entire adult life. Like, odds are they're going to get married and have kids and have this full-time job, which definitely gospel ministry can happen in that setting. But there's something so special and strategic about being single, about having this free time, and really using it for the kingdom while you're on campus, meeting new people every single day, and just, like, using it for the Lord. And so I think time really factors into that one of the best ways. I think the Lord just, like, uses campus ministries to, like, fill in those free times, and uses college ministries and churches. And students realize, like, oh, I can have a faith in college. Like, I can make a difference for the kingdom. Like, I don't have to wait until, like, I'm married with a job. Like, it can start right now.
Taylor, what do you think? We talk a lot about the trajectory and the idea that, you know, I can be all that God wants me to be once I reach a certain point in my life, right? And that comes with expectations. What does that look like for a college student who's trying to ask the question, you know, can I actually do important things for the kingdom in this season of my life?
Yeah, and actually, Chris and I were just briefly touched on this earlier today when we were talking, which is that the interesting thing is, like, you tell yourself, like, well, I've got to get, you know, past this point or past this point. But the interesting thing is that the world actually, the more you attain, like, you know, you go get that job, you add more bills, you add more, you know, you own more stuff, you start your family, and actually what happens is you get more and more tied down and less able, you know, I mean, you get to a point where it becomes a drastic cutting off and ridding yourself of things to just go do anything God's told you to do. Whereas at 19, 20 years old, if you can get plugged in at your BCM, get plugged in at, you know, Reach College and realize, no, actually, this is the only thing that matters. This is what I want to do with my life. You have relatively little that's already hanging on to you and keeping you from doing what God wants you to do. And you can say, you know what? Instead of adding more to that, I'm just going to go now.
And to add on that, like, picture it like this. You're in an airport and you're trying to get from point A to point B, and, like, it's really hard to do that with, like, a suitcase and a duffel bag and a backpack. But what if, like, you just took the backpack? And, like, in college, really, that's what you have, is, like, you have, like, a part-time job, you have your classes and stuff, but, like, when you're, like, in your adult life, you do have bills and job, and you have a lot of stuff that's important stuff that should be in your life. But when you're in college, you got a lot less to deal with.
Yeah, I remember when I first got out of college, I could fit everything I owned into one car. Like, everything. I can't do that now. So all of a sudden, picking up and moving is a chore. Even just to sell that stuff would be a muscle movement, as opposed to, I have a backpack. I can get anywhere I want to go right now.
Mm-hmm. You just need to get a bigger car.
Right.
That's the thing.
Semi-truck.
You know, yes, maybe a tiny house on wheels.
This podcast is brought to you by the Ford Explorer. No, I'm just kidding.
Who has not had a Ford Explorer at some point in their life, right? Or some SUV? Never mind. So, Christa, what do you, when you think about college ministry, what is one of the biggest excuses or challenges that you face as you are, what a mood, as you are talking to young adults who are in the season of life? Like, what's the biggest obstacle that you come up against, you know, most of the time?
I think the biggest obstacle is also the most encouraging thing. Because every single student, especially at community college, comes into college and is like, what am I doing with my life? And I think that's such a big obstacle for them personally to get over. And then a big obstacle even for like us is like just working in campus ministry or in college ministry, coming and sitting down and kind of helping them understand that like we have the purpose for your life, which is to go and make disciples. And so I think the biggest obstacle is just helping them understand that. But then once they understand that, they get it. I was actually at UCO BCM this past week, and Kyle was teaching, and he actually, at the end of it, he was like, once your generation gets it, you guys get it. And I was like, that makes so much sense. Like, and I've seen that in so many lives, is just when students get it, they just get it, and they want to live for nothing else. I had a girl call me the other day, and we were talking, and she was like, I've thought about this a lot, but if I didn't have so much homework, I could devote so much more time to doing ministry and discipling others. And I was like, you get it. Like, and so, but when I first started discipling her last semester, like, she didn't get it. And we had to move past that obstacle, but now she does. She's going out and making more disciples. And so I think, again, just the biggest obstacle is also the most encouraging thing, is just helping them understand their purpose and then training them to be able to go out and train others in that.
So let's talk about purpose. Like, as you're navigating life as a college student, you're, obviously you have your goal of getting your degree. That's a big milestone, big signpost for your life. But when it comes to like the idea of what is the central purpose of my life? God made us to do more than just make money, make babies, and die, right? So what, as you guys have not just worked with college students, but also as you've kind of traveled your own journey yourselves, like what are some things that have helped you either find purpose or to keep things in perspective as you've been navigating life?
That's a good question. I think what Christa was saying, we really have to start with the basics of like, why are we here? And it's like to know God, and love others and make disciples. And what helped with when I was trying to find my purpose was I just like came to the point where I was like, I just want to be available for him to move. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think if I had changed my major, it would have changed like 8 times. Instead, I was just like undeclared for like 2 years. But like every single week, I was like, maybe I want to be like a floral designer, or maybe I want to be like a student life director, or maybe I want to like work at a bakery or something. It just went all over the place. But I feel like once I just laid it out on the table and was like, I just want to be available for the Lord to move. Like, I just, like, one step after the other. Like, I didn't go into college thinking, I'm going to be a BCM director. It was like the initial step of like, okay, here's this internship. That's really cool. Like, I'm gonna do that and follow the Lord and obey him. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm gonna live at a BCM building and like serve him and love him in that way. And then it was like, oh, okay, here's an opportunity to like be a women's director. How cool is that? It was just like one step after another. It wasn't like I had my life figured out immediately. It was just obeying the Lord in one small baby step. And he's got you. Like, he's going to guide you if you make yourself available. Instead of saying like, oh, this is in the way, or that's in the way, or that's in the way. Like, if the Lord wants you somewhere, he's going to make a way for you to be there. You just got to follow him.
I think I read this the other day and was very convicted, actually. The book, Experiencing God. Oh, who wrote that?
Henry Blackaby.
Yes. I was reading it, and he was talking about purpose. And in it, he was like, so often we pray and we're like, God, what is your will for my life? And he was like, stop praying that. That's so selfish. Instead, just pray, God, what is your will? And I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. And I mean, it is just like what Sarah said, like, know God, love people, and make disciples. And once I understood that in college, I was like, I literally want to do absolutely nothing else. But I also think with just purpose, and I had a conversation with a student last Thursday about this, is just, I think a lot of us are coming in, especially to community college or just really wherever, and you're undeclared, and you're like, oh, maybe I want to be a doctor, maybe I want to be a lawyer, or maybe I want to be a dentist, like whatever. And you're just sitting there trying to fulfill you with these things. And I think what's happening, and what a lot of college students are starting to wonder, is that everyone was created by a God and a love outside of this universe. That's why anything within this universe and within this world isn't fulfilling us. And I think once college students begin to understand that and they begin to see like, oh, like I'm trying to get this thing to fulfill my purpose, but it's not. And it's like, yeah, how's that working out for you? Instead, maybe here's the gospel, try Jesus. Because like we were created to be fulfilled by Jesus and have our purpose from Jesus and Jesus alone. And Colossians 1:16 says everything was created by God and for God. And we were created by God and we were created for God. And once you get that, like, that's your purpose. And I mean, yeah, you might want to go and be a dentist. Okay, make disciples while you're working out people's teeth. Like, they got nowhere else to go. Share the gospel with them. So, I mean, like, and I think that's the thing is just understanding, like, you can use whatever passion you have to continue to make disciples and do what you're ultimately called to do.
And I think that's the best part about college, like being there, is you're building that foundation of like what it looks like to follow the Lord, what it looks like to make disciples while you have that free time. So it's easily to transfer into your job. Like you were saying, like a dentist, like they can be making disciples while they're a dentist or while they're a school teacher or while they're a stay-at-home mom. Like it's not just like, oh, while I'm in college, like I'm going to be in a Bible study and make disciples. No, it's like we're building this foundation so it's solid, like in truth, like with the Lord. So when you go do your job that the Lord has given you, whether it be ministry or not, like it is still for Him. Like whatever you do in word or deed, like do it for the glory of the Lord.
Yeah, and my whole thing has always, or has recently been, you made a joke about Sarah being the prodigal, but really, I mean, I went away for quite a long time, and before I came back, and I think what has been my big push towards college students and young adults is just this idea of being double-minded. It's like what Sarah and Christa are talking about with this, like, you know, not being fulfilled by the things in the world. And my question is this, like, if you're coming to church and you believe that the Bible is true on some level, why would you believe in this all-powerful God that gave you His word and told you how to live your life and then just not do that? And for me, it was like this wake-up moment of like, do I or do I not actually believe this? Because if I believe in an all-powerful God who knows exactly what's best for me, then why am I just trying to find other stuff to do? And I think that's been the most interesting thing is like getting in this place of, in my own life, of kind of waking up to that and going, okay, suddenly when I'm doing what God tells me to do, I actually am fulfilled. I actually do find joy. And then turning around and looking at college students and going, okay, do you or do you not? Like you sit here week after week, you carry a Bible with you, do you actually believe this? And when they start catching it, when they go to BCM and they get around people to mentor them like Christa who show them, and then they wake up and go, wait a minute, so you're telling me like God has literally laid out exactly how to live my life and I won't be so distraught and I won't have so many like, you know, struggles and just despair. And it's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you.
I heard sometime, I can't remember where I heard this, but God doesn't want you to do a specific thing. He wants you to be a specific person. And one of the secrets, it's not even a secret. Like it's literally written in the Word. Cast your cares upon Him, right? For He cares for you. Trust not in your own, Trust not in your own understanding, but instead, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which I'm totally blanking on now.
You're doing great. We're also all blanking on it. So
Excellent. Okay, cool. Yes. Yeah, my brain's not working. But but it reminds me though, is like, I know for me, when I was doing my best to find the thing that God wanted me to do, right? It's like that was my obsession. That's the question we always ask. God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And one of the things that I didn't realize until later in my late 20s and early 30s was that by me asking God what He wanted me to do, I was asking God for something that I could keep score on, and I could actually build my own pride and validate myself based on something that I knew that I could do. And the idea is that God doesn't care about what you do. He wants you. He wants your heart. He wants you to abide in Him. He wants you to have a relationship with Him. And honestly, if you can find your satisfaction in Him, what you do is actually relative. Because it's like, I really don't care as long as I get to be with Jesus. Like, I don't care if I'm in Tanzania or if I'm in, the backwoods of Australia or if I'm, in Southeast Asia or wherever. It doesn't matter. Like, I want to go wherever Jesus is. And if he tells me to go, that we're going to go somewhere else, great, right? Because he does care for me. And I think that that's one of the challenges for college students is that they fall into this trap of thinking, and not just college students, people in general. It's like, God is not interested in all this other stuff. Like, he wants you. It's kind of like what you just said, Christa, that his will for you is written in his word, that you know him.
I was going to say, Riley Souls, the one who told me, he sat me down and he said, God's word tells us, glorify him, abide in him, make disciples. So why are you worried about the one thing that God didn't tell you, like what job to have or who to marry, when you're not doing the 3 things that he did tell you to do? It's like, wow.
Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. It's in there.
It's in there.
The buffering wheel of death was just spinning in my head. Krista, you were about to say something.
I was. I'm like really trying to. What was that last thing that you said? Do you remember?
About being a certain type of person?
Yeah. Dang it. I really can't remember.
We can edit this part out.
Yeah, we'll just cut this part out.
It's a candid conversation.
Because, really, it comes down to us having the proper, platform and appeal and personality online. So we'll just polish this whole thing up.
I was going to say, we can edit this out, and we're not going to.
Nobody's going to know. We just need to always be the smartest person in the room. So, yeah, why would we be humble?
So on that note.
James chapter 4, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. I'm going to leave all this in the podcast.
Mostly to embarrass Christa.
Yes, because humility comes through humiliation.
I'm just going to try to think of what I was going to say, and when it comes back, I'll just interrupt y'all.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So the one of the things that I have been learning lately is I shepherd a lot of our young marrieds as well at Evergreen, and we just wrapped up a study on roles in the family. Okay, and now I'm going somewhere with this. Krista's like scoffing at me. But the Lord really showed me something really interesting that we have. So if we put all of our identity in the things that we typically associate with us, right? Once those things are taken away, then our identity is in jeopardy, right? So for instance, Scripture says that we are a child of God, that we are co-heirs with Christ. Romans 8 talks about that. It says that we are a royal priesthood, and it says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? So our identity is all centered around knowing God and making him known, right? As Christa just said. So the idea here, though, is everything else are ways that God has chosen to express himself through us, right? In all these different ways, right? So he's chosen to express himself through me as a man, that I can play the role of a father and as a husband, right? Only I can be what God has ordained for me to be, right? So if another thing is that he has chosen to express himself through me as a pastor, right? Loving and shepherding people. The challenge is that we typically will confuse roles and identity and think they're the same thing, but they're not, right? So what happens whenever I'm not a pastor anymore? All of a sudden my identity's in question, right? But if I focus on I'm a child of God, I'm a co-heir with Christ, I'm all these things, right? So my identity is secure based on what Scripture says I am, who God says that I am, right? So we live in a generation of all the possibilities, right? You can be anything that you want to be except what God made you to be.
You do you, boo.
Yes. It's like your
Culture.
There's this whole scene in Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, where there's like, everything comes back to Marvel. But there's this whole scene where like Zendaya is like challenging this guy about his truth, and maybe this is Peter Parker's truth, or maybe this is your truth. Let's just all live our truth, right? And the problem is that there's only one truth.
Only one Peter Parker.
Is there? No. Yeah.
Spoiler, sorry.
Hey, spoiler alert. But so I want to talk about that idea, the challenge of in the college world. There's a lot of competing things that masquerade as truth. So what have you guys seen and what have you experienced? What would you say to college students who are trying to navigate, like, what is something rock solid in my life that I can actually build my life on?
I actually remember what I was going to say. And it kind of goes with this, kind of not. But talking, again, just on purpose, and kind of what you're saying about you can identify as your job, and you can really get wrapped up in, okay, well, I'm going to go to school, make these grades, and I'm going to become a doctor. But church, yeah, I go to church on Sunday. And so, like, Jesus is kind of, like, on the side. And I'm not saying that you can't grow in a certain way like that, but I think in a way you have a faith that is, you've settled for a mediocre faith, and you've capped what God can come in and do in your life because, like Sarah was talking about earlier, you're not making yourself available. And I've had a lot of students come in and be like, I just don't know what to do with my life, and I'm just here, and I'm like, God, come in and do what you want to do. And eventually they'll find, like, kind of a major and things like that, but I tell them, I'm like, that is the most beautiful place to be, just this place of surrender, and always stay there your whole life. You're probably going to find a job. You're probably going to get married. You're probably going to have kids, but always wake up every day and be like, God, come in and do what only you want to do. And I've been reading this book called Humility with one of our girls at TCC, and in it, the guy said something along the lines of, self has nothing good in it except for everything to come out so God can come in and be all. And I was like, oh, that just makes so much sense. And it's this part where we just allow God to come in and be all in us once we empty ourselves of everything. So, but anyway, on your question about just identity and kind of having truth, I definitely have heard a lot of people, especially in college, just be like, oh, well, what's true for you is true for me, what's true for me is true for me. And again, a lot of people, especially, let's just take the broad spectrum of different topics of, like, religion. A lot of people will be like, okay, well, I think all religions are true. But if all religions are true, then none of them are true. And then the fact is that what you just said about you thinking all religions are true is strictly your opinion and not even true. So I think for us, the main solid thing is building a foundation, kind of like Sarah was talking about earlier, just in being like, okay, like, the gospel is truth, and I'm going to build my life upon it. And then what that looks like is just obviously discipleship and that whole process. But I think it all starts with just knowing what is true, which is the gospel. So
I think to build on that, like, when you go to college, there are like 50 plus campus organizations, and a lot of them, like, are not godly. Like, that's just the matter of fact. Like LGBTQ, or what else? Christa, help me out.
Secular Student Alliance.
Oh, the Secular Student Alliance, and like
they watch
the
movies.
Atheist Society. Like,
That actually sounds awesome.
It's a movie club.
Kind of, basically. But you are going to run into all these different people who are going to ask you questions like, what's your name? What's your major? What do you do? Why are you here? And like, when you have that foundation of where your truth comes from, like if you are in the Word and you know like who God made you and what He made you for, then all of those like conflicting opinions that are coming from like all these different people on campus, like you have so many opportunities to speak truth into that. Like it just comes into conversation. Like you're talking to someone from the Pride Association and they ask why you're here, and you tell them like, well, like the Lord called me here, and like so now I'm a part of X church and Y campus ministry, and I want to live my life for the Lord because He's changed my life, and like share the gospel in that. And they're gonna be like, yeah, that works for you, like cool, I'm glad that you're doing that, but that seed's still planted. Like that conversation that was had like is still like moving in their lives. Like they're not going to forget about that. They're not going to see that, like they're not going to miss the difference in you and the difference in that conversation. And so even though like campus tells us like you can be whoever you want to be and you can do whatever you want to do, like there's no consequences, like live your life, like YOLO, if that's still a thing.
It's not a thing.
My mom says it.
Your mom says it.
She did. She actually said it yesterday, and
I was like a
please stop.
dagger. It was like,
Wow,
ugh.
YOLO.
Anyways, like live your life how you want, but like that gives us an amazing opportunity to like actually speak to what is true, and like just be open about that, and like ask them if they have questions. Like just be honest with them. So
I think going off of that really quick, I think another dangerous thing is that people have taken what is true and twisted it a little bit. Like there's someone that I know that's a college student, and she lives a homosexual lifestyle, and she's like, oh, but it's fine because God still loves me, so I can do whatever I want to do. And so, and I see a lot of people just taking truths from the Bible, from the actual truth, and twisting it just a little bit to fit their agenda. And I mean, that's obviously just not how it works. So
How do you guys have talked about laying a foundation? Like, what are the elements of that? Like, what are key pieces of building a strong foundation?
being in the Word, and like knowing that the Word is true, and like figuring out how to know it's true. I'm gonna butcher these statistics, but I'm gonna try.
Go for it. I've
So-
already butchered Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
That's a little worse. That's the word of God.
Today we're going to talk about hermeneutics.
So when we look back, man, I'm really gonna mess this up. When we look back at all these ancient texts we have, you see like a couple of copies of the Odyssey and a couple of copies of whatever, but we have thousands of copies of the Bible. Thousands. And like people are gonna say like, oh well, you believe the Bible, but do you know there's like errors in it? Like, but if we like compare the thousands of manuscripts we have, like you'll see those errors. It's just like a typo. Like when you're texting, like when you like type
You forget a
I,
period or
yeah, you forget a period, or like you type I, but it like comes out as the letter U. Like tiny typos, but that we can compare and contrast and see like what the actual text was. And so it's credible. And there are a million things that the Lord has given us to prove to us stubborn human beings that this book we have is true. And like he is real and he's good and he loves us. And so like if that's where you're at, if that's where you're struggling with like I don't even know if the Bible's true, like let's talk about it. Like DM us or whatever, and like we will like give you resources to show you that like the Bible is in fact like one of the most credible ancient texts we have ever.
I also think a big thing is being in a community. So, like going to Reach, going to BCM, going to whatever your campus ministry is, or whatever church you go to, getting plugged into their college ministry. Because I see so many people kind of fall away, and it is always their community that reaches back out to them. And it's like, hey, missed you last week. And sometimes, like, a simple text like that, they come back the next week and they're like, you texted me and told me you missed me last week, so, like, I wanted to come, like, this week. Because, like, they feel loved. But I also think just for accountability purposes, but also just being in a community of, I mean, especially just young adults who get it and who are just, like, chasing Jesus is one of the, like, it's the most indescribable thing on this entire planet, I think. And I even... Again, going back to last Thursday, I was talking to a student, and he was not a believer, and he came to UCO BCM, and we were just sitting there, and we were talking, and at the end of it, he was like, you guys, like, there's something going on here that's different, and I like it, and I want to be a part of it. And he was like, literally, like, I played ping pong with some of you guys. We had an opportunity to share the gospel with him, and we sat down, and at the end of all of it, he just was like, the joy and passion that all of you guys have had this whole time we've been talking, and even the times that like I would just be hanging out with people here, is nothing like I've ever seen before. And because of that, I'm coming back every week. And so I think that's just a testament to a strong community that not only encourages believers to come into fellowship, but even non-believers to be attracted to that and to want to be a part of that, which I mean can ultimately just be for their good and God's glory. So,
And if we bring that back to identity, like your identity is not in that group. Like it's not just a bunch of really cool people hanging out. Like it's a bunch of really cool people who love Jesus. Like it's not just a friend, because your friend groups will either bring you down or build you up. Like my first year of college, I was in a friend group, and we brought each other down. And we like weighed each other down. We were like, TCC sucks. Like, we can't believe we're here. Like, just not enjoying life. But then once we got plugged into a community where it was like Christ-centered, that's what made the difference. It wasn't just a bunch of friends hanging out. Like, and that's where our identity came from. It's like Jesus is at the center. Like, he's our identity. And we get to be with this community that's keeping us accountable in that.
And, I think that there's something to be said too about, putting forth the effort to get plugged in. It's like, I don't know how many times I've had the conversation like, oh yeah, I came to this thing and, I've been coming for a while, but I'm not really feeling connected. And then I go back and I think about, okay, yeah, you were here, you sat in the back of the room, you walked in immediately, you sat down, you pulled out your phone, didn't talk to anybody, didn't engage with anybody. You literally just sat there and watched Netflix on your phone until the service was over, and you got up and left. Never said a word to anybody. It's like,
And we called it a checked box. Like, okay, I was
yes,
there.
it's like
and no one made the effort.
And guess what? Nobody texted me.
Yeah.
Well, nobody has your number.
It definitely is one of those things that like you're gonna get out what you put in, and I've talked to even some of our students who are like, I kind of want to go to spring retreat this weekend, but I don't know. And I'm like, well, like, why would you want to go? And they're like, well, because like I've kind of missed BCM, some evergreen students, and they're like, and I just kind of want to like grow in my faith. And it's like, okay, well, like you're gonna get out what we put in. So like, if you want to grow, like put in the work to do that, and like sign up, like be present.
So in my life, my first year of college, my first semester, I just like distanced myself from everyone. Like I even remember sitting in the cafeteria at TCC, watching the BCM people hang out, and thinking like, man, I wish I had that. But I did nothing. I just, every Tuesday and Thursday, I sat there and watched them like a creeper. Like, because they were having so much fun. But then when I took that step of like going to a BCM and talking to people, and then I went even a step further and I went to Falls Creek with them for a weekend, I literally knew no one but one person, who was the intern at the time, who like took me in, like gave me a ride. But it was that like step of like, okay, I feel like the Lord's calling me to do this. Like, he wants me to be in community. I guess I'm just going to have to put myself out there. And it can be scary. But the Lord is going to move in that and like give you that godly community that you've been craving. But it takes an action step of seeking it out. It takes the action step of being like, hey, do you want to get coffee with me? Because sometimes people miss out on those opportunities. Like, I know I have, like we all have. But like if you are craving it, like obey the Lord and seek it out, and like he will give it to you.
It's the power of an intern, really, because you couldn't have gotten there without the intern, right, Christa?
We love interns.
And now she
We
works,
do.
it's Avery Johnson, shout out, she works at TUBCM. And so it's just really cool, like how these women in ministry have just been like growing and continuing in the ministry. So super
Avery's
cool.
amazing.
She's awesome. We love her.
Did you know that I knew her when she was a baby?
Do you have pictures?
What a small world.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah,
We love the Baptist world.
totally.
Yay, small.
I call it the Baptist Mafia. Like, we are everywhere.
We should cut that out.
Everywhere. So one last thing. So if there is, we're going to wrap up here. What's one thing, if you could say something, some encouragement to a college student who is looking for a place, looking for where they belong, what would you tell them?
Come to BCM and Evergreen. I mean, I would definitely, again, I think it just goes back to you get out what you put in. So, I mean, if I sit across from a girl and she's sitting there and she's like, oh, I really want community, I just feel lonely and things like that. Okay, here is something on Tuesday night, something on Thursday night, something on Sunday morning, something for this weekend. Like, pick something.
I actually think there's like a young adults ministry that meets every day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
So, and I, again, just encouraging them to get out of their comfort zone. Maybe take like a friend that you went to high school with, take them with you, like bring someone with you, or maybe even like, this is kind of like such a small thing to do. I don't think a lot of people ever think about doing this, but like, let's say there's a student at TCC and they're like, I've heard about BCM, but I feel really weird. Like, DM the Instagram and be like, hey, my name is so-and-so and I want to come like this Thursday. And so like now in our minds, we're like, okay, we're making this person a priority to come in. And I mean, same thing, like if they like message whatever young adult ministry, I think that's a big deal. But again, I think it would just be you get out what you're gonna what you put into it. So that's what I would say.
Totally agree. But I think to add on to that, kind of what I said, like there's a young adult ministry that meets every day of the week. Well, if you come to BCM and you're like, this isn't my scene, like there's one in every flavor. Like, like you will find one you like. Like that's what's really awesome about it. And people are going to welcome you. Like you got to take that first step. I really love what Christa said of like DM them. They're gonna DM you back. Because why? We're always on Instagram. That's a podcast for another day.
That's a mood.
But like, just reach out and like, just pray about it. Like the Lord will give you courage in that. The Lord will like put people in your life to encourage you to do that. It just really comes back to like, love God, love others, and make disciples. Like it all starts with Him.
Yeah, and I think something interesting to note is like, if you go to one young adult group and then you go to any other young adult group, you're going to run into somebody you already met at the first one. So it's like, Sarah's right. There is one in every flavor, but you also, as soon as you start coming to one and getting to know people, you immediately can go to almost any other one and already know somebody. So it's like, I mean, that's how I ended up. I've gone to almost every young adult group. And most of the time it was because somebody at a different young adult group was like, what are you doing this other night of the week? Come with me to this one. And it's just, and that's the thing is like, when I was in my early 20s, these groups didn't exist. This was not a thing in church. And now, I mean, BCM's always been around, but like churches weren't putting an emphasis on this. And now every church has one of these. So just go.
So if we take it back to the original question of like why college students matter, like churches are starting to figure that out. Like there was a time where like we were this weird middle ground of like, oh, you're out of the youth group, great. Oh, you're not married with kids?
Here, go hang out with all these other people that are also single.
Or do you want to be a youth
and in
volunteer?
their 40s.
Come back
like
when you're
work
married.
in the nursery, like there wasn't a place. But then like a switch flipped, and like the church realized like they are available. They are ready and willing and like craving this. And like Tulsa has just bloomed in that. And I'm so excited to see like how that continues. But like if you are a college student and you're a craving community, like there is a place for you. You are not alone, and like we want to welcome you into this Christ-centered community.
I think also just adding on to that with churches, when I was kind of in my phase of church hopping, I was in college. I was wanting to find a different church, and every church I went to, there really was not a college group or a young adults group. And like Sarah was saying, I think churches are beginning to realize that college students are the most available, yes, but I think college students are the most apt to be used strategically to fulfill the Great Commission. And I think churches and campus ministries are beginning to understand that and beginning to cultivate these foundations and things like that to disciple them in order to send them out. And like, again, like Sarah said, Tulsa's really grabbed a hold of that, and it's just been like a cool thing to be a part of. So yeah, it's just been cool.
And real quick, if one of the things holding you back is, oh, well, I went to church when I was younger and I got hurt by this person or this ministry or like by this thing someone taught on, like go to church and ask those questions. Yeah. Like, and they want to talk to you about it. Like if there was some hurt or some contradiction, like go to these ministries and ask. Because like we want to talk to you about it. That's just the matter of the fact. And like the fact that you took that step of like, okay, like I was hurt in this way, but I want to see like how the Lord's going to move in that and like use that. Like we want to be a part of that journey with you. So don't let a past conflict stop you from like being obedient to God right now and seeking out community.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things that comes to my mind, you guys mentioned that God's doing something in Tulsa. He's doing stuff all over the country, which is insane. I've been doing this for a little over 3 years now, and what's amazing is that because of what God's done in Tulsa, we're also starting to get contacted by other churches and pastors outside of Oklahoma that are asking, like, they're seeing what God's doing in young adult ministry in Tulsa or in Oklahoma, and so they're starting to ask those questions. One of the things that is interesting is that one of the parts of church culture that is really destructive is this idea of sheep stealing, right? That, there's a thought, oh, well, I can't go back to my home church because I have done all this stuff. That's one thing, like I'm the prodigal, nobody's going to believe me or whatever. But then there's also I can't go to that other church group because, I need to go back to my home church. I need to be part of this. There's this expectation. But what's amazing is that God has actually put together, he's warmed the hearts of all the people in young adult ministry in Tulsa, for instance, to where we have young people that go to other ministries, and the pastors that shepherd those ministries, we have a mutual love and concern for all of the young adults that are involved in whoever comes through our doors. So it's hey, why aren't you at such and such? How are you doing? And they're like, wait, I didn't know that you were friends with my pastor and this, that, whatever. And it's amazing to see how God, he cares enough about young people, he cares enough about young adults, that he would actually deploy a team of shepherds to love them and to encourage them in their walk with Christ. And it's not just about competing, it's actually, he's doing something incredible.
And that's why I love the gathering. If you haven't heard about that before, it's a literal gathering of college students, of young adults that happens once every few months. Every denomination, anyone can come. All these young adult ministries gather together, and we just want to praise Jesus. Mm-hmm. And we keep saying it over and over again. It's about him. Mm-hmm. It's about Jesus. It's not about what ministry you go to. It's not about what church. It's not about what community you're in. It's about him and finding a place to know God, and love others.
Mm-hmm. So, Sarah, if people want to get connected with TCC BCM, where do they go?
We have a signal that shines into the sky.
It's a gander.
Yeah, it's a little fighting gander. No, I'm totally.
That would be
That would be pretty.
We're making it happen somehow. So literally look us up on Instagram, TCC BCM, also Facebook if you still use that. We meet pretty much every day of the week in some form or capacity. Monday nights, we meet in the west side of Tulsa with Riley Sal. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have lunch on different campuses at TCC. And then Thursdays, we meet at Southeast Campus at 7 p.m. So, the best way to stay up to date on all of this is social media and the little goose that's going to be in the air.
It's a gander.
But people don't know what ganders are, so they're sitting there going, what is a
For those of you who don't know,
gander?
a gander is a male goose.
It is. We're the fighting ganders.
See,
No.
It started as a joke years ago, and then it kind of
now it's
caught
real.
on.
now it's a thing.
Yeah, I'm totally here for
I'm
it.
waiting for that petition to the legislature to approve the mascot.
Yeah, probably not. But TCC BCM, fighting ganders, come check us out.
Yes, and if you don't have a church home, we would love to introduce you to what God's doing here at Evergreen. Taylor is. How can people get connected with college ministry here at Evergreen?
Yeah, so we have our young adult service on Tuesday nights. That's you and me doing Reach. But then, honestly, our heart with the college ministry was college students a lot of times go to a church service and they don't have a place. So now we have a 9 o'clock Sunday school class for college students. It's before our second service here at Evergreen. You can find us on Instagram, but you can also just show up and somebody will point you to that class.
Mm-hmm. You can find us on Instagram or on all the social medias on YouTube. All of our messages are on YouTube as well. But just search for reach.tulsa or reach.college. You can find us that way. As always, we exist to know God and to make him known. So for now, I want to invite all of you to be part of what God's doing in Tulsa. The only thing that's missing is you. So we will see you soon.
Hey guys, this is Philip Jackson, pastor to young adults at Evergreen Baptist Church. I want to invite you to come to Reach. We meet every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at Evergreen Church in South Tulsa, just east of Mingo on 111th Street. The mission of Reach Tulsa is to cultivate a young adult community that's defined by real transformation and the sincere pursuit of a godly life through training in biblical disciplines, personal development, and intentionally transitioning into independence as mature members of the body of Christ. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe to our content. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Reach Young Adult Ministry is a part of Evergreen Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For more information and additional lessons, please visit our website, evergreenbc.org.